First place in the NFC West on the line with the Seahawks hosting the Cardinals at Lumen Field. Who has the edge rolling into Week 12? We're going to be diving in on a new crossover Thursday edition of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, 12s and Cardinals fans. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. Glad to be teaming up with Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals, our first of two crossover Thursdays that we're going to have here in the NFC West over the next 3 weeks. Going to be seeing a lot of me, Cardinals fans. Going to be seeing a lot of Alex Clancy for the 12s here next couple of weeks, with first place being on the line in the NFC West. It's still crazy that I'm saying this with the way that the Seahawks have played most of this season, that they win this game, they jump into first place in the NFC West. Alex, this has been such a crazy division in the sense that I know Arizona's won 4 straight going into their bye week, but it's been such an inconsistent division. Every single team has been a roller coaster this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is not how any of us scripted this when we did our NFC West preview show. It was the 49ers are going to win. We'll see who's coming in, in second place. Can Geno Smith elevate the Seahawks? And the Cardinals going to win more than 4 games? And nobody knows what the hell is going to happen with the Rams with their roster construction. And now it's been one of the more incestuous, if you want to call it, divisions where everybody's beating everybody. Everything's close, and nothing has been decided through 11 weeks, which is it's bananas.
It's going to be a really fun game to break down because two teams, I would have said going in opposite directions, but then Seattle gets a huge win in San Francisco. But nonetheless, as you said, everybody bunched together. This is for first place in Week 12. This crossover Thursday edition brought your way by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Alex, let's talk about those first place Arizona Cardinals. Now, those of you that listened to our NFC West preview, I remember that there was one of us that said the Arizona Cardinals may be a dark horse. I did not think they were going to be in first place, though, at this stage of the season. And the way that it's gone for all 3 other teams has certainly played into that. But at 6-4, coming off a bye week, this Cardinals team has been playing fantastic football. They've won their last 4. And from the outside looking in, to me, the biggest difference has been Kyler Murray. And just seems like he has taken that next step that everybody was waiting the last couple of years for him to take. He has taken it this year. What have you seen from him in year 2 in this offense? Obviously, some of the new weapons that he's got, most notably Marvin Harrison Jr. How have you seen him elevate his game to a level where I think he's playing like a top 10 quarterback this season?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple different things. One, the offense is being run competently. It's balanced. The offensive line, I could argue, is playing top 3 offensive line football this year, which is something I didn't have on the bingo card, wasn't really expecting it, especially with the entire right side of the offensive line. Right guard, Will Hernandez out for the year. Jonah Williams, right tackle, which was one of the bigger offseason acquisitions. He played 2 snaps this year before getting hurt. He should be playing on Sunday, but still, Kelvin Beach has been fantastic at right tackle in his stead. The thing that's working now for the offense, it's making Kyler Murray look like this shining star, like, we know he can be, and he's shown at times over his career, is the defenses now have to choose. Stop the run, stop the pass. Pick one. And they'll be able to go after the other. We saw in consecutive weeks, the Cardinals ran for over 200 yards and won a game. Kyler Murray then threw for over 300 yards and won a game on the road against Miami. So it's like, you got to kind of pick your poison. And I said this before the season started. Kyler Murray just needs to be an elite game manager who makes special plays when the Cardinals need it. So that's what he's done. His numbers aren't gaudy. 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He has a couple touchdowns on the ground. He hasn't done anything quote-unquote special like we're seeing Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson do. He's just run this offense the best way any quarterback could, and the Cardinals are winning because of it.
And they obviously have a fantastic run game. I was saying this on our show on Tuesday. I said this the end of last year. I think the Arizona Cardinals have the best schemed run game in the NFL. I've been saying that since last year. I think James Conner's incredibly underrated. They've added some depth at that position. So it feels like, as you mentioned, pick your poison. Arizona's run game, Seattle's run defense has been god-awful most of this year. It's been a lot better the last couple weeks, but you have to believe Arizona is going to be going to this game, especially coming off a bye week with them having fresh legs. You got to think they're coming to this game like, hey, we got to find a way to get that run game rolling and see if we can rack up another 200-yard game in this one.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is now, Corbin, like, unfortunately for Seahawks fans, Trey Benson's starting to see the field a lot better. Rookie third-round pick out of Florida State. People are saying that he's the heir apparent to James Conner. I'm saying chill the hell out. James Conner should get a contract extension. There's no way he's going anywhere else for the rest of his career, but they're starting to give him more touches. In the first quarter, they're giving him a series. In the second quarter, because if this offense goes as James Conner and the rush attack goes, you need to keep him healthy for the remainder of the season and into the playoffs if the Cardinals inevitably do make the playoffs. Trey Benson has really started to show that he's 80% of James Conner. Even in his rookie year, the game slowed down for him. He's reading blocks well. He's hitting holes with burst well, like we know he can. And yeah, I mean, you could see the Cardinals rushing for 150-plus yards without Kyler Murray going beyond the line of scrimmage, which is something that is an absolute dream scenario for this team.
Meanwhile, on the defensive side of the ball, this is where I had bigger questions about Arizona going into this season because they had such a young defense. And they haven't even had their other first-round pick, Darius Robinson, this entire season. So I just didn't think this defense – I expected there was going to be some games where they played well. I expected there was going to be some games they really struggled. But it seems like this group is ahead of schedule. And what I find intriguing about them is you don't have anybody with more than, I believe, 3.5 sacks, but there's a boatload of guys that have 2 or 3 sacks on this team. It really has been one of those cases. They don't have a star rusher, but they got a bunch of guys that can get after the QB. What have you seen from Jonathan Gannon's defense to this point, which it seems like they have been clicking on all cylinders in this 4-game winning streak too?
Yeah, it's defense is instinct and trust with your guys around you. I mean, that's pretty much what all defense is, and these guys are playing as one cohesive unit. I know that sounds like a cliche, but it's not. You know, you're right. The pass rush is non-existent from the front four, whatever scheme that they've schemed up against the opposing offense. But what we're starting to see the evolution of is the exotic blitz packages that Nick Rallis is putting together. You're starting to see Kazir White and Mac Wilson, the two guys in the middle of the field at the backup position, getting behind the line of scrimmage. Buda Baker is having a career renaissance. You've got, Garrett Williams and Max Melton, the two young corners who both love to hit people. All blitzes need to be are guys who are fast, can get to the quarterback, and can lay a punch. And the Cardinals have those in spades, even if it's not the 3 or 4 guys up front. And it's Darius Robinson. We'll see if he plays on Sunday, first game action. But what we're seeing from the Cardinals is bend, don't break. And that's pretty much, been the motto this year. And they've been opportunistic at times, and they've been the surprise for sure. But the offensive efficiency has allowed them to be a little bit more free than, oh no, the offense isn't producing, so they need to turn the ball over, or they need to do this or that. And they haven't had to do that. So they're being able to learn and grow organically, regardless of who's playing on defense. But I do think, Corbin, that is a surprise for me. I did say going into the season that the cornerback room is going to be the most directly correlated to wins and losses for the Cardinals. Garrett Williams is bona fide CB1 at this point, 3rd-round pick 2 years ago out of Syracuse, and Max Melton out of Rutgers is really starting to come into his own. And then you have Buda Baker, Jalen Thompson, and rookie Adrian Taylor Demerson out of Texas Tech, who are starting to show like this secondary could be one of the best in football in years to come.
Yeah, Taylor Demerson was a guy that I absolutely loved coming out of Texas Tech. So when I saw Arizona draft, I was like, oh, really? You're going to put him in there with Buda Baker and with Jalen Thompson and some of the other pieces that they've got there? The Cardinals secondary has maybe been the biggest surprise to me. Other than Buda Baker, we expected him to play at a really high level, just an outstanding safety. But as you mentioned, this is why, look, I don't want to go into a rant, but people devaluing the run game on offense, it has driven me nuts for 15 years. And you just see week in, week out, the value of that. And it goes beyond what you're doing on offense. It helps out your defense when you can run the football. I mean, Seahawks fans have seen the opposite this year, where the defense has been put in bad spots. Geno Smith's been put in bad spots because they can't run the darn football. So Arizona's ability to be able to do that week in, week out, it doesn't just help Kyler Murray. It doesn't just help the offensive line. It helps those guys on defense and makes it they can play more aggressively with the way that offense is. So this Cardinals team has been really fun to watch all year long. They're going to be looking to come out of that bye fresh and hold serve first place in the NFC West. But the Seahawks might have something to say about that as we head into week 12. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some of the key storylines with Seattle coming off of a huge win in Santa Clara. Don't go away. You're listening to the latest Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, hear me out. Real talk here. We've all been there feeling like we're burning cash with those rent checks. It's frustrating, right? But here's the deal. Built Rewards has figured out a way to make rent more rewarding. Say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to a renter's revolution with Built. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points in your rent every month. Pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. You can use your points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points towards a flight or a hotel. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties, you can also use your points to book studio fitness classes, redeem them for future rent payment. They're designed to meet whatever your lifestyle is. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade with Built Points, which have consistently been ranked the highest value point currency by Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedinNFL. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedinNFL. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedinNFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. This crossover is also brought your way by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can bet at everything from Trey McBride scoring a touchdown against the Seahawks on Sunday, or Jackson Smith-Njigba being the first player with a 30-plus yard reception. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Seahawks Cardinals edition. I'm Corbin Smith, the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. Glad to be teaming up with Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals. And Alex, this is kind of a unique crossover in the sense that you and I were talking about this before the show. You actually were at the Seahawks 49ers game on a Sunday, and you, as an outsider, somebody that covers another team in the division, had kind of an interesting assessment of the way that game played out for both teams. Seattle's obviously viewing this as a huge game changer because they hadn't beaten the 49ers in like 50 years. It really was only 3, but it felt like it had been 50 years. To get a win on the road, it was huge for morale, and Geno Smith putting the team on his shoulder, running them to the victory at the end. But as you were pointing out, it wasn't necessarily a clean game on either side for these two rivals.
It looked like everybody was bored, like just going through the motions. It's weird. You know, I've been to plenty of live football games. So if you, it's like, it doesn't matter. On TV live, it translates the same. Like if I was watching on TV, I'm like, man, do these teams want to be here? It's like it's like the division's in the balance at this point. If the Seahawks lose that game, Geno Smith doesn't march down and score that touchdown with 12 seconds left or 13 seconds left, you're looking at 4-6, man. You're done. Like there's no coming. Like you've got to win 5, 6, 7 in a row to come atop the NFC West. And the fact that they won in miraculous fashion was great. But Seattle did win that game. The 49ers didn't lose it. I think it was just, I was very surprised with how the new coach for the Seahawks have those guys prepared, even though the run game hasn't been great. And Kyle Shanahan, is lauded as one of the best coaches in the NFL, even though he's never won anything. I thought I would see a better product on the field in week 11 than I did.
Man, it was a rough game. And granted, the 49ers have injuries. The Seahawks are still trying to figure things out. They had a center retire in the middle of the week. I mean, there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on in Seattle. But I guess from a more optimistic standpoint, and I like that you said that Seattle won that game rather than San Francisco gave it to them, because that's the way that I view it. I think Seattle, late in the game, they seized it. And you got to give Geno Smith that credit, because Geno Smith, I don't know what it is, the end of games, that dude has as much clutch gene as anybody in the NFL. Yeah. He just finds ways to get it done. 10 game winning drives since he began to start in quarterback in 2022. But I'm looking at a more optimistic viewpoint from the sense that Abraham Lucas makes his debut at right tackle. He had some missed opportunities. He showed some rust, but he also had a couple pancakes. The IHOP was back open up front, which that got me excited because they were playing fourth string tackles in his place, and it was just not working out. And then center Oluwatimi, who replaced Connor Williams, I mentioned, retired in the middle of the week. Oluwatimi goes out and gives up a single pressure. And look, this might just tell you how bad the center situation has been for Seattle for like 10 years, but that was the cleanest game I've seen a center play at least since 2020 for the Seattle Seahawks. And so I'm like, hey, we got some competent offensive line play for once, and those guys are going to get more snaps together this week. Maybe that's what it takes to get this run game going, because Ken Walker III should be a perennial 1,000-yard runner. And the fact they have not been able to get him going consistently, it's all on the offensive line. Can Oluwatimi and Abe Lucas be the ones that carry that forward to get that run game going? Because, gosh, if they could just have an average run game with the passing attack that they have, with the way that Geno Smith slings the ball around, they could transform their season. So I'm looking at this win, even though it was kind of ugly for both sides. Just the fact that it was the opponent they beat and the way they did it, the offensive line playing better football, that bodes well for them going the second half. Now, they got to carry this over multiple games in a row. There's got to be consistency, which they have not had this year. But that's really the big positive storyline for me coming into this game, is maybe some competent offensive line play with Oluwatimi and Lucas now in the lineup.
Yeah. So is the ghost of Max Unger still, residing in Lumen Field? Is that still happening there? I mean, geez, that was a long time ago, man. So let me ask you this. Okay, this is my biggest thing. DK Metcalf should be, in my opinion, an Amon-Ra St. Brown target monster. I don't know why it's not, and I know he's been injured. I know he was dealing with a shoulder and a knee that caused him to miss a little time before the bye week, but do they pepper it around so much to, JSN and Tyler Lockett that he's not a 12 to 14 target a game guy? I just feel like with him being such a physical force and great at 50-50 balls, he's got, a vertical that, only angels have. Like, why does he not get more looks throughout the game with, in part of the game plan?
I don't view him, Alex, as a target monster, ironically enough. I think he's always going to be kind of I'm not comparing him to Randy Moss, but the kind of player that Randy Moss was, in the sense that you don't have to target him more than 4 or 5 times for him to do just significant damage because of what he does downfield. And here's the other factor here. I mentioned this Tuesday. I think you can make the argument now Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best receiver on this team, and it's not DK Metcalf. Okay. Jackson Smith-Njigba, the last 2 weeks, has had 280 receiving yards, I believe. Yeah, 280. That's the third most ever by a Seahawk in 2 games, in a 2-game stretch. And Steve Largent was the one that did the other 2. And we know how great Steve Largent was. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been incredibly efficient. I mean, 10 catches and 11 targets this last game. He is winning downfield. He is winning it in the middle of the field, which is where his bread and butter has always been. The Seahawks can actually run screens now, which I'm still just flabbergasted saying that, because it's been like 2 decades since they ran screens effectively. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been such a big part of that. So, DK Metcalf, when he's been healthy, has had a really good season, but the one game where they were trying to force feed it to him, the first game against the 49ers, he caught 3 out of 11 targets. Like, it just didn't work. So they have to find a way for those to be more organically done. And I think the fact that Jack Smith-Njigba is coming into his own now is going to open things up for DK Metcalf, because opponents eventually are going to get to a point like, I can't let this guy beat me by himself, which is what Jack Smith-Njigba did at the end of that game against San Francisco. He had almost 50% of their yards on that last drive. I think that opens things up for DK Metcalf moving forward.
Yeah, so we'll pivot to the defense here in just a sec, but I do want to ask, DK's got the wide receiver 1 ego that comes along with it. It's not an original story. Okay, he wants his touches, he wants his yards. There's been issues over the last couple of years with that. Is he going to be good with JSN taking that Tyler Lockett, the new age Tyler Lockett, maybe times 2 that JSN looks to be able to achieve? Is he going to be good with playing second fiddle or third fiddle, including the run game?
I think that he would be fine, because I think that there's this diva persona that people are throwing out there, but I think DK Metcalf just wants to win. Like, he is the utmost competitor. I think that's what he's most concerned about. Like, there's been games where he hasn't had huge numbers, and he's been super happy after the game. Like, I don't view him as a guy that's going to be pouting in the corner if he doesn't get 150 yards every single game. But now he wants to be involved. There's no question about it. But I think as long as you're winning, you don't have to worry about that. Now, if they're not winning games and JSN's getting the targets, then you got to start wondering if that's going to be something that manifests into more of a problem.
Yep. And one last thing about the defense, you mentioned that the rushing defense hasn't been stellar. What are the strengths of the defense that the Cardinals need to watch out for? Speaking to the Locked On Cardinals viewers.
It's really ironic that I'm saying this now, Alex, but this is how much one player has changed things. And Ernest Jones, because the Cardinals played against him with the Rams. But Ernest Jones is another position, off-ball linebacker, that so many teams have devalued the last few years. Like, you look at the best teams in the NFL right now, for the most part, they have really good players at the off-ball linebacker position. It's an incredibly important spot. I mean, you look in Baltimore where Mike McDonald was at, until they got Roquan Smith, that defense was average. They get Roquan Smith, and suddenly they're a top 5 defense. Patrick Queen goes from Baltimore to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh already had a good defense, but Patrick Queen has transformed that into the best defense in the NFL. Ernest Jones is having that kind of an impact since coming from the Titans in that pre-deadline deal. He 37 tackles in 3 games, and it's not like he's just tallying them 10 yards downfield. His average depth of tackle against San Francisco was under 1.5 yards, and he had 13 tackles. I mean, the guy was just killing them up front. I call him the Great Wall of Ernest because when a running back hits him, he goes down. Like, this guy is an incredible tackler. He has made this run defense go from being one of the worst to, in the last couple of weeks, it has been a top 5 run defense. And he can cover, he can blitz. Tyrese Knight next to him, the rookie, is feeding off them. So it's ironic that I'm saying the run defense now in the last few weeks is a strength because of one guy, but he has made that kind of a difference. I would still say the biggest strength, though, is the secondary with Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen are both playing, capable playing. And then Josh Jobe, of all guys. Josh Jobe was released by the Eagles at the end of training camp. He was on the practice squad. He has started the last 4 games. He has the second best passer rating against in the entire NFL for corners. He has been phenomenal, and he's played physical football. Really, he's brought out the best in the 2 star corners with his play at the other spot. So that secondary is still, I mean, the 49ers had 1 reception of more than 14 yards on Sunday. Like, that's unheard of. I know that Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle were out, but you still had Ricky Pearsall. You still had Deebo Samuel, Jawan Jennings. They had plenty of weapons, and Christian McCaffrey gets a lot of big catches. They held him to 1 catch over 14 yards, and the pass rush wasn't great by any means. It's that secondary. It is suffocating.
I love it, man. I love it. Let's do keys to victory next. Game predictions, crossover Thursday here. Locked On Podcast Network.
This episode is brought your way by our friends over at BetterHelp. What's the first thing you'd do if you had an extra hour in your day? For me, I wish I had a little bit more time to lift weights and work out during the busy regular season. The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. BetterHelp Online Therapy will assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. Therapy has worked wonders for me over the past couple of years. I've had a lot of different family-related health issues that I've had to try to weather through. But don't just take my word for it. Having someone in your corner to guide you when you're struggling to navigate obstacles can be invaluable. If you're looking to start therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Welcome back to Crossover Thursday here, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Cardinals. I'm Corbin Smith, glad to be teaming up with Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals. And we've got this massive game coming up, Week 12, first place on the line. I still can't believe I'm saying that because Seattle lost 5 out of 6 at one point, but they're 5-5, and they are only a game behind the Arizona Cardinals. They win this game on Sunday, they are in first place in the NFC West. It's been a crazy division so far. Alex, looking towards this game, the Cardinals have won 4 straight. They're coming off a bye week. They're going to be fresh. They've got as much momentum as any team in the NFL, but you're still coming to Seattle. The Seahawks are coming off a big win. What do you view, as the keys to victory for the Cardinals to keep this thing rolling at Lumen Field?
So the first one's kind of a mindset thing. It's not like the Cardinals need to instill dominance if they want to really solidify themselves. It's a perfect test for both teams. One, to flip the script, Seattle to emerge as the NFC West leader through 12 weeks, and for the Cardinals to really be like, listen, this isn't 2021. It's not 7-0, 10-2, and then not winning the division that year after having a 3-game lead with like 4 to play when Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach. It's a new team. It's a new organization. They're the Detroit Lions light. This is that the Cardinals absolutely must do if they want to continue the momentum. Getting a win at Lumen Field is something that is so much bigger than just one game to maintain the lead in the NFC West. Now, how do they do it is they need to exploit the weaknesses of the Seattle Seahawks. And Corbin, you said it first, running the ball is how all of this starts and finishes. That's one of the ways the Cardinals can dominate. And they've shown that way, running for over 200 yards in one of the wins recently, over 150 yards in the majority of games this season without Kyler Murray. But really, the game plan needs to be keeping the Seahawks guessing and exploiting weakness. What maybe you're going to box Kyler Murray, eat you alive. You're going to have a light box. James Conner, Trey Benson, and Kyler Murray are going to eat you alive. So really what it comes down to is proof of concept from what we've seen the last 4 weeks, doing it on the road, division opponent, getting your 5th win in a row and solidifying yourself as a team to beat in the NFC playoffs this year, not just 2025.
When I look from a Seahawks perspective, particularly on the offensive side of the football, to me, this is a game the offense has got to step up because that's still the one thing that is holding this team back. And I'm not blaming Geno Smith. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, well, he's got 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Look, half of those interceptions were not his fault. The one he threw on Sunday was a bad throw, but his offensive line has let him down. He hasn't had a run game to complement him for most of the season. But it feels like with the offensive line, the way they're playing, with Abe Lucas and Timmy being in there, that this is an opportunity, especially against the Cardinals front line, as you mentioned. They have not done a great job of creating pressure. This should be a game where Geno Smith is able to have some time back there. You got to be able to pick up the blitzes, though. That's going to be the key. You have to be able to, as an offensive line, be able to communicate, okay, that corner's, Garrett Williams is coming on this play. And make sure you've got the communication on point. And you got a new center, so that is going to be a question mark. Is he going to be able to handle it? 49ers didn't blitz very much in the last game. Arizona is going to send blitzers. They are going to mix in some exotic sim pressures. They are going to do those things. So the offensive line communication is going to be key because I think if they're able to pick those things up consistently and Geno Smith has time to throw, I have great respect for the safeties that the Cardinals have. The young corners are playing really well. But I'm still taking DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Jigba and Tyler Lockett against those corners. If Geno Smith has time to get the ball downfield, especially at home, I'm taking those matchups all day long. So to me, it's the communication from that offensive line. And I think that also going to help out with your run game. They're going to have to be able to mix in some run to be able to set those opportunities up for Geno Smith. You look at Arizona from a defensive standpoint and how they have to deal with this Seahawks offense. What stands out to you from a keys to victory standpoint?
Secondary, it's going to be the same thing. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be a problem. I wonder if they're going to put Garrett Williams on him, who can play in the slot. He's been the best corner that the Cardinals have had. I really think that, and I've said this for the entirety of the season, that the Cardinals need to cut the head off the snake. You got to get to the quarterback. Because regardless of how good the secondary has been, I don't trust that as much as I trust, the offense being able to produce. So getting to Geno Smith, maybe making him throw a duck or two, being opportunistic, that's the biggest key for the Cardinals, because while the secondary is played out of their shoes, I don't know if there's an expiration date on that when you go up against an offense that is as potent on paper as the Seahawks have. So, I mean, that's for me. I mean, Garrett Williams has shown he's a top 5, analytic cover corner in the league this year. I just don't know if they're able to withstand the strength headed monster receiver. I don't know if Noah Fant's going to play, but he's a terror in the middle of the field. And then you have the 2 running backs. It's going to be a tough day, but getting to Geno Smith is key number 1.
From a Seahawks defensive perspective, anytime you play the Cardinals, to me, it revolves around the quarterback. And one thing that Pete Carroll did really well, he always seemed to have good game plans for being able to handle Kyler Murray with his mobility and being able to create some pressure. Is Mike McDonald going to be able to do that? He's been more in his bag the last couple of weeks. I will say he has been doing a better job getting his players in position, maximizing their strengths, but dealing with a mobile quarterback. Is he going to be able to do that? Because I think if you can take away that running element for Kyler Murray and you can find a way to bottle up what you've done the last 2 weeks and the run defense in general is better, you trust your secondary, even against a really potent Cardinals passing game. You trust those guys because, look, Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, and even Josh Jobe, that's as good of a 3 cornerback group as you're going to see in the NFL. Make them try to beat your strength. And I think that's going to be the key. It all boils down to the run defense and making sure Kyler Murray doesn't kill you with his legs either. And then say, hey, Kyler Murray, you beat our corners. We're going to put that in your corner here. You got to beat Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, Josh Jobe. Our safeties are good too. You have to beat our secondary in this game, and our pass rushers get the opportunity to get after you. That is going to be the key to me. The Seahawks are ironically a 1.5-point favorite in this game at home, even though it feels like it's been 7 years since they won at Lumen Field. The Seahawks are the favorite. Going into this game, the Cardinals are coming off the bye. They won 4 straight. I expected that the Cardinals were going to be the favorite on the road in this game. But, Alex, when you look at that spread and the Cardinals coming to Lumen Field and just how big this game is for both teams, what is your sense as far as the Cardinals against that spread this week?
I'll take the points. Take a little juice. I think really what this is going to come down to, for including the over-under, is who can score touchdowns and who's going to hold the opposition to field goals. The Cardinals have done a fantastic job holding opposition to field goals. They held Justin Herbert's offense to 6 field goals or 5 field goals, and they had 400 total yards on Monday Night Football in Week 7, I think. Week 7. They've been a great bend, don't break team who's, not giving up a whole bunch of touchdowns inside the red zone. I think that's what it's going to come down to. And the Cardinals need to get 6 instead of settle for 3. They've been one of the best teams goal to go scoring touchdowns. And I think if that trend continues, the Cardinals will get a dub. But it really is going to come down to who can execute inside the red zone, inside goal to go. Touchdowns or field goals will tell the story.
And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's the same thing for the Seahawks, who have the last couple of weeks they've been terrible in the red zone. Now, they took a big step forward in this game against San Francisco. They were much more effective when they did get in the red zone. They were able to finish drives. Can you do that against the Arizona Cardinals? They have been so good this year at turning 6 into 3 or 0 even. You have to finish drives. So it's kind of one of those something's got to give type matchups, which usually means you have a pretty tight game on your hands. And I'm expecting that this is going to be a close one. Don't know if the Seahawks can cover that 1.5 or not, but we will find out on our Friday shows, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Cardinals, when we have our game predictions for what we expect is going to go down on Sunday. As always, a special thanks to the 12s and Cardinals fans. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you listen to Locked On Seahawks and Locked On Cardinals on Friday. Again, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the game.